made the decision a year ago. I just said, by the time I was 60, I don't want to work anymore, right? So it's like, that was kind of a dartboard point.
Welcome to Where's My Money? One man, $1 million of debt, one podcast to find a way out.
Welcome back to Where's My Money, the podcast for people who aren't rich and who wish to be. I wish it was that simple. No, this is the podcast where I'm bringing you on my curious journey to understand the big world of money and how we can be better at it, better with it, better around it. So let's do it. It's been a big week in New Zealand when it comes to money. Some big changes are coming to our retirement scheme thanks to the budget the government announced on Thursday. And although it's all for the greater goal of a surplus for the country, it does mean a bit of a stink move that means the free KiwiSaver cash we get every year as an incentive for saving has been cut in half. Boo! So I thought it was a good time to talk retirement, KiwiSaver, and how we can be set up for when we want to stop working and live la dolce vita, the sweet life. Lisa and Di from Enable Me are in to talk all things retirement. I also chat with Roger. He's done what a lot of us would love to do. He retired early. He joins me from his caravan in Wānaka, where he's currently building his dream home. Yeah, he's nailed it. A reminder, this podcast isn't here to replace any financial advice, as we can't take your personal circumstances into account. We recommend you go and get some advice from a trusted strategist, coach, or other financial advice. Lisa and Di are very good at dishing that advice out every single day at Enable Me, and they're in the studio today to talk getting old in style with no financial worries. If we're talking about retirement as kind of the big long distance end goal, right, for most people, you'd hope.
Yep.
When is the right time to start thinking about it?
I think today, if you haven't done it before, if you haven't thought about it yesterday, then definitely today is the best time. The sooner you start, the easier it is. You don't have to start big. It could be very small amounts. It could be just putting a little bit extra into savings or into a KiwiSaver. Could be starting to think about investing, but small is best, and starting, the longer you have, the better off you are.
Totally. And in that sense then, in your line of work, does it worry you how many people turn up that aren't thinking about it or prioritising it or even remotely aware of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's about 65% of Kiwis that are not ready for retirement. And if they can start thinking about it early 50s, perhaps 40s, got a mortgage, getting that sorted, but they need to get into wealth creation as soon as possible.
That's an interesting point, is it's not just running towards the finish line and retirement's just there. You have to do the work along the way, right? And it's not just assuming that the government's going to cover your bum when you get to it.
Yep.
So it's to understand how much a happy life costs and how you fund it. So if we fast forward to retirement, we want you to have a mortgage-free home that you're comfortable with, an appropriate home that perhaps you're happy to live in for the next 10, 20 years. We need to build up enough wealth to fund the 25, 30 years of retirement with investment. So pay off the mortgage, get investing.
Do you think there's an issue with just, I don't want to say education, because we talk about a lack of financial education when it comes to Kiwi kids, and whether that's true or not. Is there a lack of awareness around retirement in the sort of early stages? Like, I think back to when I was 22. Retirement wouldn't have even slipped into my head because it's an old person thing to do. That's how I perceived it was. It's what old people do. I'm not an old person, therefore retirement's not a thing.
Yeah.
Is there a shift that needs to happen there in terms of awareness and education as to what it actually means?
Absolutely. I think it's not sexy talking about retirement. It's something that
and very little about what we talk about on this podcast is sexy.
No, that's
true. A problem. Yeah.
But it's I think we all aspire to owning our own home and things like that. So that becomes the priority when you're young, and people start talking about that quite early on so that they can build a deposit and that kind of thing. But I think the retirement piece comes much, much further down the track, and people focus on paying off debt.
Yes.
And they think they can't retire, they can't start thinking about retiring until they've paid off that mortgage. And that is not true. You can be doing things while you've still got your home mortgage to be setting yourself up, because the longer you save, even if it's small amounts, will compound. You'll get the compounding interest effect over 10, 20 years if you're putting money away a little bit every month, and that builds a bigger pot for you for later on. So it's really important that the earlier you start, the better off you are.
Yeah. It's funny now that I'm, a dad of 2 in my mid-30s, retirement is, it's not to say that I've started to plan for it necessarily, because I've got KiwiSaver bubbling away, and that's always a good foundation. Retirement has become a part of the next part of the Kiwi dream for me, which is doing it early. I want to retire early. Like, I don't want to have to work for the rest of my life, even though I love my job, I've got a great job. I don't want it to have to define me until I'm 65.
You want options.
Totally, and that's financial freedom, right? Do you get clients turning up sort of going, I'm quite keen to retire early, and you kind of have to tell them, no way, buddy.
Sorry, we've got a bit of work to do first. Yeah.
Is that a hard one to deliver? Because a lot of people might expect that they can just do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of the young ones that are into that FIRE movement, and there are some questions around whether they should own a home or not. Quite hard to navigate. In New Zealand, that tends to be the way we go, and I guess doesn't matter if they don't own a home now, but if they are renting through retirement, they need to accumulate a lot more.
Yeah.
Because you've got 25, 30 years of rent to factor in as well.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the stats we hear are based on you owning a mortgage-free home.
Yeah, that's kind of the assumed thing, is that you will be mortgage-free.
Yes.
Is there a worrying amount of people that are still mortgaged when they come to their desired retirement age?
Yeah. And a recent survey showed that 70% of Kiwis think they'll still be working at 70. That's fine if you love your job, but you don't want to have to cover more groceries.
No, again, it should be a choice. And a lot of people, we had a guest on the pod last season who spoke about her dad who... the day his first day of retirement, he ended up in hospital because he had this panic attack basically because he didn't know about, he'd lost his purpose. He just kind of ambled around the mall for 2 hours and then basically had a heart attack and nearly died because his body was like, what am I worth now? So there's a lot of people who want to continue working until they just can't because they love what they do, but having the option to do that or not is so critical, right?
And seeing how your parents are in retirement is a driver for a lot of younger clients. They go, I do not want to end up like my mum and dad because they're still working, they have to work, and so that's quite a motivator for them to get themselves sorted earlier.
Lisa and Di are pretty switched on, but as a financial strategist or coach, I reckon you've got to be able to walk the talk before you talk the talk, or however that saying goes. So I asked them what plans they have in place to make sure they're set up for the day they want to pull plug on the working life.
I've got savings. I've got KiwiSaver. I've got an investment property. So all of those things hopefully will be heading me in the right direction. And my husband's doing the same as well. So we're working out what we're going to need. And we're thinking about how much of a pot we need when we get to retirement, and we don't want to work till we're 65, ideally. So we're thinking about how much money we're going to need. We also want to have nice things like travel and...
Well, that was going to be my other question, because you're planning for it and you're building your pot. Do you think, are you aiming for like the luxury level retirement or something more mid-range?
We definitely don't want a no-frills retirement. We want a choices retirement. So we want to be able to travel. We want to be able to help our son with his education, help him get on the property ladder if he wants to. So things like that are really important. We need to factor in keeping the house maintained if we want to stay where we are, or renovations, things like that, and cars and things like that we're going to need. So on top of the regular costs that we've got, all of those things we need to think about, and then we need to plan how much we're going to need to cover those and work backwards.
So for our story, for us it was concentrating on the mortgage, getting to that stage where we could leverage the equity in our home, jump to an investment property, got a lovely one there that's working well. We want to keep it for a property cycle.
Yep.
We're not there yet, so we need to keep it a few more years. My husband's transitioning to retirement now, so I'm staring down the barrel of it, like how does this actually work with money coming in and etc. So, yeah, I think we're okay.
Cool. And I guess something that's kind of misunderstood, I think, based on a lot of the conversations we've had, is that KiwiSaver is all you need. Yeah. We've kind of come to the conclusion a bunch with different guests that KiwiSaver is great, but it's just not enough. Even for a no-frills retirement, it might not be enough, depending on what your circumstances were.
Yeah. Well, especially if people raid it to buy their home. Yeah. So, you know, they might start working after university, or when they start work, and they might build up even 10 years of KiwiSaver, but they pull it out to buy a home. So then they're resetting it again. So it might be 30 years, 35 years of savings. So with the low contribution rate, I think we need more than that.
Yeah. I mean, there might be people who earn such great amounts of money and put away so much that it doesn't matter, but it's unlikely. If they've been earning that much throughout their life, they've probably had quite a good lifestyle as well, and they'd want to continue that into retirement. And that's been something, again, it's like picturing yourself in retirement. What do you want to do? Like, how do you see yourself living?
Yeah. And it's also important to think about KiwiSaver only being accessible at 65.
Yeah.
So if you want to have the flexibility to know you could retire earlier, you can't rely on KiwiSaver for that, and your super's not going to kick in either. So you do need other assets that you can, or other income streams that you can use to bridge the gap. If you're going to retire at 60 or something like that, you need the 5 years of income stashed away.
There's probably something to be said. We've spoken a lot about side hustles too. There's probably something to be said for picking up a couple of side hustles when you've retired too, just to keep physical, keep your body active, all that kind of thing.
Give your purpose, something to get out of the house for. Yeah,
totally. Because the side hustle thing seems to be targeted at millennials and Gen Zs that use Instagram and show off about them. But realistically, there's people with skills who no longer have full-time jobs that can put it to work and keep
But even Airbnb, if you are lucky enough to pay off, have some rent coming in, part-time job, do a bit of consulting. Yeah, there's quite a few options, even having a boarder.
And also if one of your retirement options was to travel lots, put that asset to work, earn some money back off it when you're not there, and then...
True.
Yeah, it's probably a really smart thing. Yeah. Have you had people in the past who have retired, they've started off okay, and then it's kind of all gone tits up because maybe they've just burnt through their cash? Like they thought they had more than they did. You know, their lifestyle didn't keep up with what they'd put aside.
I think it can be tricky to navigate because normally the first 10 years of retirement you spend a lot more.
Yes.
Because you're younger, fitter and healthier, and you do that bucket list of things that you want to be able to tick off.
Because there's 5 more days in the week all of a sudden.
And you've got a lot more time, and you want to be able to enjoy yourself while you've got your health, and you're not sure how long you're going to have it, so you want to make sure you make the most. So that first 10 years can be quite expensive if you do all those big trips, and you need a new car when you retire and all of those things. But then after that it tends to calm down a little bit, but you've still got your, if you're still well enough, you still want a little bit of nice to haves and travel and things. So still, you still need to plan ahead for those, but you do need a chunk of it up front.
Any traps? I know that moving country can affect your eligibility for certain things like super if you've lived in Australia, and KiwiSaver. Are there any traps that you've come across quite a bit that people should be aware of?
I think it's about the supers that you get in each country. I'm certainly, from my perspective, I'm from the UK, so I won't qualify for a full super here or in the UK. I'll get portions of both. So understanding what you qualify for is really important because everyone assumes we're going to get the full amount from the country you live in at the time you retire. That's not necessarily the case. So you might need to top yourself up with your own savings on top of that to make sure that you've got enough. So, definitely important to check, and you need to go into the relevant websites to find that information.
Yeah, it's all available, isn't it? But I guess this is where it helps to get a coach on board, is to show you all the different, show the opportunities, but highlight the traps as well. So there's nothing that's going to catch you off guard. Were there any other super hacks to retirement that you think you wanted to share? I mean, it is a topic that we hit quite hard in the last season, but every time I talk about retirement, there's always something that comes up. And I go, wow, really?
Well, I think it's never too late.
Yeah.
So, we still have people coming to us in their 60s with a mortgage. Just let's smash it down. Let's make a plan. You might need to work a little bit longer. That's fine, as long as you've got a plan.
Yeah.
It's tough when you wake in the middle of the night doing mental gymnastics, trying to work out whether you're going to be on track or not.
Yep.
So it's lovely to have a independent person, I guess, and have a bit of a plan on paper.
Yeah.
At least you know.
Yeah, totally. The peace of mind is just so, from our perspective, doing enablement, it's freeing the stress off your shoulders, knowing that you've got a plan is really, really life-changing. So,
yes. I've had one where a woman had gone on a trip, she'd come back, she had $20,000 and a house, and that was it. And she's
ready to retire?
She was retired.
Oh, right. And
she'd been retired a few years. And she needed to go to a retirement village or downsize, and she didn't really like any of the options. She had left it way too late, and that was heartbreaking, really, to see.
Because there is only so much you can do at that point. You can squeeze timelines or stretch them, but sometimes someone's gone off the runway and there's not much left.
And I think when some people think they will downsize their home on retirement, and back in the day you can move from a big city to the region and release a whole lot of equity. It's kind of changed. So be realistic. Also, some people might say, well, I've got a 4 or 5 bedroom house, but it's 40 years old. And when you buy a home for retirement, you want something with low maintenance. You want something that's easy to live in.
Yeah, it's accessible.
So there might not be a big difference. You might not release a lot of cash. So,
moving to the regions, what's changed there in terms of how it used to be a good option? So pack it all in Auckland, move to Napier. You've got the equity.
Well, I think Auckland's Tauranga is almost as much as Auckland.
Yes,
so going to Tauranga would be hard.
Yeah.
Sure, it depends what you're looking to buy, but
But also another consideration for older people is being near medical care and hospitals and things. So sometimes they want to stay nearer to those facilities.
Or their families.
And the support that they get if they're going to need looking after later on. And that may not be available in the regions anyway. So they don't have the choice about downsizing or finding releasing equity from their home.
While we might not be knocking on the door of retirement, there's a chance we're close to someone who is. Maybe it's mum or dad or another relative. If you're concerned about how well set up they are for retirement, is that a convo we should start? And if so, how do we broach the topic with them?
That's a tricky one.
It is.
Yeah, I think...
I'm not usually known for my tricky questions, but...
No, throwing it in there.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a conversation about. You just need to ask the question about what are your plans? What are you thinking about doing? And then kind of get them to talk about what they would like, and then it might lead on to them telling you a little bit about what they've already got in place. If they've got some savings, if they've got some assets that they can sell, and then you can help them to understand what's realistic. But it's a tough one, definitely.
I think we have a lot of clients who do worry about their parents.
Totally.
And, send them in.
We
can do what we can.
Sign them up.
But,
do you build that into people's budgets often if there's...
Yes.
Helping their parents out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the sandwich generation in a way that often they're helping older parents and adult children. Yeah. And there's a bit of pressure there.
That's a hard one to navigate too, because you need to do the right thing by your family. But
Lisa had a figure. What was it? 1 million?
There's 1 million Kiwis supporting adult children in their retirement.
Really?
And that's a huge pressure on people who have a reduced income already to be able to then find extra money for their kids.
Is that a housing affordability thing? Kids haven't moved out of home because they just can't afford to get, or they don't think they can get on the property ladder?
Potentially, yeah, I think so. Otherwise, they're helping them out in other ways because they are renting somewhere, or they're buying a house, but they need a bit of help with the payments or with other things. So I have a lot of clients who want to know that they can help their kids out by $5,000-10,000 a year just to cover other extra costs that the kids may not be able to cover themselves because they've got a mammoth mortgage to worry about. So they're having to kind of make allowances for their kids on top of their own costs.
Once people have retired, is sticking to a budget as critical or more critical because you've only got potentially a finite amount of cash to work with as you move closer?
More.
Yeah,
definitely, because, I mean, it's important to build up enough along the way, but once you retire, you've got a limited amount of money and you've got to make it last. If you run out early, there's no fallback option apart from you going out to work and earning some more.
And this is why ideally you've got some assets that are generating more income for you, right?
Yeah, that's right. Or something you can sell that will give you a few years of extra money.
Yeah.
So, you've definitely got to be careful and plan what you're going to spend. Otherwise, you can easily whiz through it in the first few years and then you've got nothing left.
Okay, it's easy to talk about making a plan, but I wanted to talk to someone who's actually cracked it. Whether you have your hand forced or whether you've just planned it so perfectly it couldn't have gone any better, early retirement sounds pretty damn good. Because who wants to work forever, right? Roger is a salt-of-the-earth bloke who's nailed his timing. Not without a few scares along the way, but he retired before 65 and he joins me from his caravan palace in Wānaka to tell me all about it. Roger, you are the guest that I don't want to say you're a unicorn because I want to be able to encourage other people to achieve what you've achieved.
Sort of a little bit of an epiphany. You kind of work and you climb corporate ladders and do all the sort of things you're supposed to do, and in 65s and everyone retires then because you get, 40 grand a year. If you're a couple, you're not. If you're single, you get pretty much nothing. And everyone seems to stop, but it's just like, I think we had my wife had a major health scare a while ago, and then a second one, like totally unrelated, which sort of pants this a bit. And then just some friends had some pretty major illnesses, and we just sat down and went, what the hell are we doing this for? Because it's all good around planning and stuff, but I think a lot of people focus on finances so much, but they forget what the real gig is. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, what's it all worth? Like, what's it for?
Yeah, totally. And the other one, which I think is really important, is defining what rich is or wealth, because everyone sort of puts it in a box and said it's all about money, right? And I know this is a money show.
It's in the title. Yep.
No, really, really intellect, but being rich is not, that's just one side of the balance sheet in terms of assets and money. The other part's how you live your life and conduct yourself and your friends and relationships and what you're into. And yeah, that's really important too. And I think a lot of people focus on one thing, and you can have some really big fat cats out there who are really miserable, So it doesn't necessarily totally relate to happiness, I guess.
Well, it is a nice reminder that, it isn't, that money can't buy everything, including happiness. But, we talk a lot about planning for retirement. Plan, so we can retire, have financial freedom. But you are a retirement six. I hope you are, man. I hope you are. You are the retirement success story. So how old were you when you actually got to that point where you retired?
Just a few months ago. January, pulled the pin, made the decision a year ago. I just said, by the time I was 60, I don't want to work anymore, right? So it's like, that was kind of a dartboard point, I guess. But prior to that, career-wise, it was like, well, actually I want to slow down and, live life a little bit better too. So kind of graduated, wasn't just one big slice, like it was a big nice stop, but on the way there, jumping off that corporate bandwagon and then moving into something that was more valuable in terms of what I wanted to do as well.
More of a passionate job.
So at that stage, it's about choice and having the economic ability to actually make those choices, I guess. It's very important.
Did you mentioned having some health scares, so you had to make some life changes around that, but a lot of people probably aren't in the position to just go, well, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to retire in a year because of their circumstances. Did you have to make any shifts in that year in order to set yourself up? Other than making the call, what other changes did you have to make?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Probably getting your ducks in a row. So sort of winding back just a little bit, always was the plan, like 3 things that were really important about retirement was, wanted to live in Wānaka, bought a plot on where my brother and I used to play on, since I was 3 years old. Like, it's really spinny. It's so cool,
that
where
is
we
cool.
ended up. And then the other thing was wanted to travel, a fair bit. And then also health, just being outside, you're inside working all the time. It's just, I love being outside and doing things. So that was important. So then we stripped that back and just went, right. A lot of people go, oh, yeah, I need to have so many rental properties and I need to, $10 million or whatever. But I think the big thing is to work backwards and say, well, look, if you've got a point that you'd like to retire and say the average age of, leaving the planet is 90.
Yeah.
And say your number's, 55, and then you go, well, okay, I've got a plan for 35 years. I need it to live in that period and then work backwards. So like, how much would I spend in retirement? Which actually may be less than now, but you chuck in some other big things in there. It might be fairly similar in terms of your lifestyle that you're leading at the moment.
Yeah.
So then you work that out, and then you can work backwards of actually how much I need and am I there? So you've got to work out your start point. Then you figure out what I do, and if there's a gap, what am I going to do about it? And that's more around strategy.
Yeah.
So you might be able to save. If you're not able to save, what other levers do I have to fill that gap? And that could be property and through leverage. It could be side hustles. Good example, a goal might not be retiring. It might be traveling. So this is like late 80s, right? So my wife and I, we decided to travel. We had 5 jobs between us, saved like how worked like dogs to save enough money to go, do the OE thing in the UK. Which is really bad. We just want to go away all the time now.
Yeah, you caught the bug. So what did your plan actually include? You're talking about maybe having investment properties and maybe some side hustles. You're obviously working, you had multiple incomes, but when it came to going, right, I want to retire at this point, what was your strategy? Did you have a few properties on the go, or did you rely on investments? Was it a combo of all of the
it was
crypto?
A combo. So not much in the old KiwiSaver so much. Pulled that when I finished a corporate role, and then put that into property, subdivided some land that I bought years and years ago and paid it off. Big thing is find the spot you like, buy it and pay the damn thing off, then build. That's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, nice. Awesome.
And just through leverage a little bit. If I had my time again, I would have bought 1 billion properties at that time because it was really easy. It was simple. Rates were, housing wasn't that expensive really for what you got.
Yeah, land was a lot cheaper than it is today, certainly in Auckland.
Absolutely.
So I was going to ask you that question, like what advice would you give to someone in their 20s or 30s who might not think retiring early is even possible? So you're thinking just property, play Monopoly, buy property?
Everyone's totally different. Like, there's not one size fits all. Because, if that did, then everyone would jump into some sort of asset class, which Kiwis love property. So, hence the demand just keeps going, because it's a thing that everyone, a lot of people gravitate to. But I think the big thing is figuring out what actually savings are. And savings are actually for spending later on. So it could be for retirement, it could be for overseas trips, it could be for, deposit for a house or buying cars or whatever it is.
All of the above.
So, and I think it's the real piece is because I think you've touched on this before, Reagan, that life, there's some really clever corporates out there that love stealing money out of your wallet. Really good at it. They know our behaviours. They know
we can't avoid it.
do.
We're being
Exactly.
marketed to around every corner. You cannot avoid
100%.
people trying to take your hard-earned money these days.
Absolutely. So it's really weird. And I put this out there, like, I don't know how many hours of work you spend, right? Or most people who
Heaps, man.
are working hard. So say I'm just putting it out there. Say you work 50 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
And you spend 50 hours a week in this job because you absolutely love it. In fact, you do it for free, wouldn't you? But how many hours?
Like, my boss is listening. I'm at work at the moment.
No,
Who's
of course.
listening? Yeah. I do it for. No, I wouldn't do it for free.
But if you did 50 hours a week to earn money to support yourself and do what you want to do, the question is, how many hours a week do you spend looking after that money? So you spend all this time earning it, and most people would be less than a minute's thought a week looking after it, which is really dumb if you kind of think of it in a logic point of view. So the big thing is, I think if, get a good plan and be aligned. If you've got a partner, absolutely be aligned. Talk about what do you want to do.
Yeah.
And put in some time frames and milestones and goals, around that. So whether it's whatever savings you're looking for, indeed, if it's retirement, that's a bigger piece of work. But figure that out first, and what does that look like? And then work backwards, with your numbers.
Do you regret not doing it even earlier? Now that you're there? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And do you think it would have been possible to live how you're living now and do it, 5-10 years earlier?
Well, mate, I'm living in a caravan, so yeah, I could have done it a long time ago.
Sure, the overheads
while
aren't
I'm
huge.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like when I say I'm living in a caravan, on site, I'm trying to chase 20-something-year-olds around a building site. It's hilarious. But I'm going to be elderly soon, apparently. So
you don't look or sound it, mate. I think it's probably the youthful exuberance you're radiating because you don't have to think about going to work every goddamn day.
Well, it's true. It is totally true. Like, look, I've lost heaps of weight. I'm fitter. I'm outside, enjoying, this, learning new stuff. And look,
That's
the thing
awesome.
is, and in reality next year, who knows, might go do something, paid or unpaid work, but at least got choice. Don't have to, which is quite cool, actually.
That's interesting. You talk about, going and earning more money because just because you've retired doesn't mean that you have to stop making money,
100%.
right? And if you earn some more, sweet, you can go do more cool shit. What did it feel like that day? You've said you had like a little bit of a lead in where you made the decision, I'm going to retire. What did that first day waking up and going, world's mine, what am I going to do today? What did that feel like? Because I've heard that a lot of people on the first day of retirement can actually feel quite lost because they've become so accustomed to going to work and that being the definition of who they are that they forget what their
Really
actual true self exists for.
100%.
And people have ended up in hospital.
Yep, that is absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. That's it is so important, part of that planning process, which I touched on. It's not just about money, it's about who am I, what do I want, and if I've got a partner, who are we? These are really deep, can be dark conversations, but they're really, really important to have. And it's like any relationship, it's around communication, right? So get that, they really need to get that sorted. So I've always thought as a bit of an anathema, a lot of couples have their own finance and, like I earn this and they have a pool account, which just seems a bit weird to me because you share your bed, you share your food, you share everything in your life, the dog, the kids, whatever. And then the money's just, no, don't touch it.
The communication stuff is so key, and that's what, you've listened to the pod, so we're just trying to encourage people to talk about it, think about it, plan, explore what all these things actually mean. Like, it's all good to talk about money, but what are you talking about? Like, how are you addressing particularly in a relationship, what are the friction points? What do we want to achieve? Where do we want to be? What do we want to do? And even though we're good at it in our relationship, I think there's still room for improvement. I don't think anyone can nail it. Were you guys good at talking about money earlier on in the relationship, or was it as you got closer to this retirement point where you said, let's really get good at this?
No, I think early on in the piece, yeah. And there's always friction points, My spending habits are probably not as good as my wife's. I would have to say.
Wait, does that mean your spending habits? So does that mean you're better at spending or worse at saving?
I'm really good at spending when I want to. Yeah. 100%.
What is it? What's your weakness? If you've got cash burning a hole in your pocket, what do you go and spend it on?
Skiing.
You're in Wānaka, so both of those things make a lot of sense.
Mountain bikes and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, those are the things too. I mean, if you plan for it, go and spend 8-10 grand on a mountain bike as long as you use the damn thing. If you don't use it and doesn't add value to your life and you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
Because the Joneses tend to be not very nice people, as a rule.
No, and they're full of shit. Like, they're actually, a lot of the people that think they are the Joneses to keep up with, they're just faking it. And they've got the same crushing stress in the middle of the night that a lot of us still have.
Probably worse.
They just possibly worse.
It's right. Overgeared and over-egged. But I had some really good tips too, I remember, what's his name? Yeah, when a long time ago, in Wellington, I was working and Bob Jones was talking about managing his diary.
Yeah.
And putting his own personal, appointments in his diary. I was thought, you sad bastard, when I left, that evening. And I thought about it. And he always said, put in your diary your personal stuff in red, because he loved paper and, not electronic diaries. And that's the most important thing that you do in your day. Don't miss that. So don't miss your exercise. Don't miss your health piece, your mental health space, whatever it is, your partner, whatever it is. That is really, really important. So make that at the top of the priority list.
That's interesting coming from a guy who's old school businessman with this rough, spiky demeanor. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
But the fact that he prioritizes personal stuff, and that's probably something someone in your position now goes, absolutely, right?
It was. I remember that night going home thinking, you sad bugger, and then I thought about it overnight and I thought, man, that's a really good thing to do. There's a lot of things.
Ages and stages when it comes to that too, though, because I remember in my early 20s, my job defined me. Like, I worked really, really hard to climb the ladder, and I still am. Like, I'm trying to climb the ladder in order to earn more money, but the priorities have changed where it's for my kids now. I want to earn more money so I can send my kids to good schools, and rather than just piss it against the wall and go drinking every weekend. I think it is that age and stage thing, but that shift has to happen too, where once the family's involved, that's got to define you, not your job. You can still be really good at your job, but it's that priority shift and then balancing, or you don't want to take the foot off the gas in terms of career development, because it's going to help you fend for your family, but it's a hard balance to strike, right?
It is a hard balance, but if you get the personal stuff wrong, then your ability to keep performing at a high level is severely impacted.
That's really good advice.
So you cannot keep, you can't keep hammering at it, without actually having some balance in life. And then a lot of it comes around to health. So you're useless if you don't have good health.
What were you doing to look after yourself once you realised that was important? If anything.
I don't have a lot of time to look after myself. I'm building a house, mate.
Oh, shut up. You're not out there with a hammer, are you?
I am. I thought I'd be pointing fingers and going down to Fletcher's, down to Placemakers and picking up gear, which I am, but no, they got me on the tools from when it's light in the morning till dark, running around.
That's why you've lost weight.
It's hilarious. I'm learning a lot, and the guys are just awesome. Amazing.
But when you were living that corporate or working the corporate life, what were you doing to look after yourself?
I just made sure I could get out and do some swimming, which I really enjoy, or biking, and just trying to spend that time as much outside as I possibly could. And then with family, spending as much time with them also, that's that's a balance thing. But if you don't look after yourself, you're no good to them either.
Yeah, and that's the stuff you can't get back.
And combine those activities as a family, that's okay, but it tends to be at a lower pace that doesn't increase your heart rate. So I think that's really important. You're going to look after yourself. And it's like your own plan, like your financial plan that you put in place. If you can get someone else to help, that's awesome. Not only to help you construct it, but also to be accountable. But if you're not started, it ain't going to work. You just... a lot of people talk about it, but never get off their ass and do it.
See, it is possible to retire early. For Roger, it was 5 years early, but I guess if you want to go hard and do it earlier, it's all possible. You've just got to figure out what the end game is and work backwards from there. A big thanks to my guests, Lisa and Di from Enable Me, and of course, Roger the retiree. If you've got any topics you want to know about and you think I could do a bit of a dive into, get in touch. DM at Where's My Money NZ on socials or email me where'smymoney@rover.nz. On the next episode of Where's My Money, a special OCR update where I'll be joined by a very special guest and friend of the pod, Frances Cook. She's going to help break down the next OCR update and what it means for people like you and me. I'll see you then, where we will ask the question together, where's my money?